But it's all over now. I don't need you anymore.
In a previous video, we explored the many theories surrounding Silent Hill 2, the symbolism, the multiple endings, and the meaning behind its most terrifying creatures. But today, we take a step further. This is not just a story about a haunted town. This is a descent into one man's fractured mind, a deep dive into the psyche of James Sunderland as he navigates the horrors of Silent Hill, both external and internal. What does it truly mean to be lost in Silent Hill? Is James merely a victim, or is he an architect of his own suffering? And above all, what does his journey tell us about grief, guilt, and redemption? James walks cautiously, gripping a letter in his hand. His breath is visible in the cold, damp air as he scans the empty streets. The letter, seemingly from his deceased wife Mary, serves as the catalyst for his journey. A message from beyond the grave, calling him back to the town where they once shared their happiest moments. But Silent Hill is not as he remembers. The streets are abandoned, coated in an oppressive fog that distorts reality, making distances seem infinite and buildings appear and disappear like mirages. The streetlights flicker weakly, barely piercing the dense mist. The air is thick with an unsettling silence, broken only by the distant, unidentifiable noises scraping metal. Faint whispers, the occasional static hum that seems to reverberate from nowhere. James slows his pace as he passes old, decrepit storefronts. A rusted swing set in a small, overgrown playground creaks softly, moving as if pushed by an unseen force. The sense of familiarity is present, but warped like a dream, turned into a nightmare. The town feels alive, not in a welcoming way, but as if it's watching him, waiting. He stops near a street sign, fingers tightening around the letter. He reads it again, his lips barely moving as he mouths Mary's name. But something is off. The ink remains fresh, unaged. The paper is impossibly pristine, untouched by time or the elements. The rational part of his mind whispers that this shouldn't be possible, that Mary is gone, and yet the words remain, a siren's call luring him deeper into the fog. He exhales shakily and takes a step forward. Silent Hill has always been a place of memories, but now it is something else entirely, a realm twisted by his own mind. And whether he realizes it or not, this town is not welcoming him. It is trapping him in a reality shaped by his worst fears and hidden sins. Loss is a powerful force. It shapes us, defines us. It can push us toward healing, toward understanding, toward acceptance. But it can also consume us. It can become an abyss, pulling us deeper into self-destruction. For James, grief is not just sorrow, it is punishment. It is a weight that grows heavier with every step he takes in Silent Hill. But punishment for what? At first, it seems simple. The loss of his wife, the emptiness of his life without her. But that grief is not pure. It is tainted. There is something beneath it, something unspoken, something that gnaws at him from the inside. And Silent Hill knows. This town is not a place in the traditional sense. It is a construct, a reflection, a distorted mirror that warps and twists reality to reveal the darkest recesses of the human mind. For James, it is a living, breathing purgatory, shaped by his own subconscious. The streets are not just abandoned. They are hollow, lifeless, suffocating, because they mirror the emptiness inside him. The monsters that stalk him are not random. They are grotesque manifestations of his own psyche. Each of them, an extension of his suffering, his guilt, his self-loathing. But James does not yet see the full picture. His mind refuses to accept the truth. The letter in his hands is the ultimate deception. It is not real. It never was. And yet he clings to it because it represents something he cannot face, a life he ended with his own hands. It is his last, desperate grasp at hope, at redemption, at the illusion that perhaps Mary is still waiting for him. That this is all just a misunderstanding, that the unbearable weight in his chest is grief, and not something far worse. Silent Hill will not let him escape this lie. The deeper he ventures into the town, the more it strips away his delusions. forcing him to confront his sins piece by piece. Every encounter, every whisper of static, every grotesque creature serves a purpose. They are not just obstacles, they are lessons. The town is unraveling his carefully constructed reality, pulling apart the narrative he has clung to so desperately. And James? He is walking the path of a man who has already been judged. Silent Hill is not offering him salvation. It is watching, waiting to see whether he will accept the truth or allow himself to be devoured by it.
What you got there?
None of your business. You didn't love Mary anyway.
What? Hey, wait! How do you know her name?
The child that appears before James in Silent Hill is far more than a mere figure, a spectral presence within a decaying world. She is the embodiment of the innocence and purity that James has lost. She represents the life that was cruelly taken from him with the death of his wife Mary, and is the painful reminder of what he failed to protect. In the fleeting glimpse of Laura, James sees a symbol of what he could not save. Not just his wife, but the very concept of a life that could have been better, more peaceful, and full of hope. Laura is not just a hallucination within Silent Hill. She is a direct reflection of his deepest, most consuming guilt. Her silence speaks louder than any words ever could. She doesn't need to voice anything for James to understand what she represents. The mere fact of her existence is a direct indictment of his failure, of his inability to be the man Mary needed, the man he had hoped he was. Laura, seemingly so pure and innocent, is an impossible ideal that James could never live up to. He could never protect her, nor shield her from the inevitable fate she met. She stands before him as a fractured ideal of innocence, a reflection of everything he has lost and failed to preserve. Her presence is a mirror to the part of him that desperately wishes he could rewrite his mistakes and undo the irreversible damage he has caused. Yet, Laura's existence is fleeting, a reminder of the things that are gone forever. She is not a real child, not in the conventional sense. She is the manifestation of James's grief, his guilt, and the overwhelming weight of responsibility that he cannot outrun. His mind creates this vision, this innocent figure, as a representation of his inability to shield Mary from the tragic end that she faced. In Silent Hill, Laura is a construct, born from his own pain and suffering, from the unresolved guilt that festers within him, and from the memory of a time when things could have been different. But Laura's silence, the way she lingers without offering any solution, reflects the impossibility of returning to that idealized past. The girl, as much as James may want her to be a savior, is a reminder that he cannot escape the consequences of his actions. As James faces this illusion, this child figure, the overwhelming truth becomes more evident. He cannot change the past. He cannot undo the wrongs he has committed, the mistakes he has made, and the consequences of those choices. Laura represents the part of James that refuses to let go, the part of him that still clings to the hope of redemption. But Silent Hill will not offer him the redemption. It will only give him the brutal confrontation of his reality, a reality that is marred by guilt and loss. Laura is not there to heal him. She is there to make him face the full weight of his actions, to confront the truth of what he did and what he failed to do. She symbolizes the purity lost in James's soul, his innocence, his hope, his dreams, all of which were taken when Mary died. And yet, just as quickly as Laura appeared, she fades. Her disappearance is not just the end of a hallucination, it's a poignant reminder that James can never reclaim what was lost. He can never return to that idealized time when things seemed possible, when innocence and hope were still within reach. Laura, the symbol of everything James wants to protect, is gone, and in her absence, James is left alone with nothing but the unshakable truth of his guilt. Laura was never real. She was never a tangible being, just a fragment of James's fractured psyche, an idealized version of what could have been. She was a fleeting glimpse of innocence, a representation of his heartache, and a symbol of everything he failed to protect. Laura was a brief moment of fantasy, of what James wished could be, but it is not the world he lives in. Silent Hill does not exist to provide comfort or redemption. It exists to force James to face what he has done, what he has lost, and what he must now live with. James must accept that the innocence, the purity he sees in Laura, is gone forever. He must come to terms with his guilt, not in the form of answers or solace, but through the painful recognition that it is part of him, something he can never escape. Laura's brief presence serves as a mirror, a reflection of everything he has lost, and of the part of himself that will always remain broken. She is not here to forgive him. She is here to make him understand that no matter how much he wishes otherwise, he cannot undo what has been done. The haunting truth is that James must live with this loss, this guilt, and this self-inflicted punishment for the rest of his existence. Silent Hill is not a place of healing. It is a place of reckoning, a place where the past is never forgotten and where the sins of the soul are laid bare for all to see.
In my restless dreams, I see that town. Silent Hill.
James Sunderland, a man caught between two worlds, the physical world around him, a world full of horrors and nightmares, and the internal world within him, where his guilt and regret are the true monsters. It's at this edge, this precipice, that we find James standing before Toluca Lake. The fog that shrouds this place is not just a veil over the physical landscape, but a metaphor for the fog that clouds James's mind. Every step he has taken, every choice he has made, has led him to this moment. But does he choose redemption, or does he embrace the depths of despair? Silent Hill 2 offers us not one answer, but many. It presents us with multiple endings, each shaped by how James confronts, or fails to confront, his own guilt. The first possible ending, we encounter the leave ending. It is the light at the end of the tunnel. Here we see James make the hardest choice of all, to leave Silent Hill behind. He accepts the truth of his actions, the reality of what happened to Mary, and he moves forward. But this ending is bittersweet. Silent Hill, in all its horror, has shaped him, twisted him. Even if he can leave physically, emotionally, and mentally, can he ever truly escape the town's grip on his soul? The fog that surrounds him may lift, but the shadow of his guilt will never fully disappear. And that's what makes this ending so profound. It's not a happy ending, but it offers a glimmer of hope, a chance to move on, to grow, to rebuild. But what if James can't escape? What if he cannot forgive himself? What if the weight of his actions is too much to bear? In the in-water ending, we see James take the ultimate step into the water, not as a symbol of cleansing, but as an act of surrender. James, in this ending, believes death is his only way out. He is beyond saving, beyond redemption. The grief, the guilt, the pain, they have become too much for him to handle. So, he steps into the lake, allowing himself to be consumed by the water. In this moment, he chooses not to fight, but to succumb. His body, like his soul, sinks into the depths. There is no salvation here, only the cold embrace of the water. And yet, in this ending, we also see the tragedy of James's inability to let go of his pain, to let go of his guilt. The water, symbolic of his overwhelming sorrow, becomes both his final release and his prison. And then there is the Maria ending, perhaps the most tragic of them all. Here, James's grief takes the form of a hallucination of Maria, a woman who looks exactly like Mary, his late wife, but without the illness that plagued her. Maria represents James's desire for a second chance, a chance to relive the happiness he once had. But Silent Hill, in its cruel irony, shows us that even in this twisted version of reality, James cannot escape the cycle of death and loss. Maria dies, and she dies, and she dies again. No matter what James does, he cannot save her. And each time she dies, his guilt deepens, because in his mind, he is still living out the same tragedy. He is still trapped in the past, unable to move forward, unable to let go of the woman he once loved and lost. In this ending, James is trapped, not just by Silent Hill, but by the suffocating weight of his own psyche. His mind has constructed this twisted world as a reflection of his inner turmoil, and Silent Hill is both his prison and his tormentor. He is unable to escape the past, the memory of his wife's death, and the guilt that has consumed him since that moment. Every step he takes in this fog-ridden town is a step further into his own despair, and he realizes that he cannot escape what he's done. His need for atonement, his desperate search for redemption, are his chains, and no matter how much he tries, he cannot break free. The death of Maria, an echo of Mary, may seem cruel, but it is in fact the ultimate manifestation of James's inability to confront the truth. Each time he brings someone into his life who resembles Mary, he is only digging himself deeper into the cycle of guilt. In his mind, no one can ever truly replace her. No one can heal him. Maria is, perhaps, his last attempt at redemption, a second chance at something that was never truly possible. But she too becomes a casualty of his fractured mind. And with each death, the cycle repeats itself. There is no resolution, no escape, only endless repetition, each moment a mirror of the last. It's a cruel fate, but one that James has created for himself. The sound of Maria's death echoes, a constant reminder of the failure that is his life. The camera lingers on James, standing motionless, his face a mask of quiet devastation. In this moment, he is paralyzed, not just by the horrors of Silent Hill, but by the crushing weight of his own self-loathing. He cannot forgive himself. And in this unforgiving town, the past is not something he can move on from. The past is alive, it follows him, it shapes every moment of his existence, and it will continue to haunt him forever. Each of these endings tells us something deeply personal about James Sunderland, about who he is, what he has become, and how he grapples with the monsters of his own creation. Silent Hill 2 does not offer us easy answers. There are no absolutes, no neatly wrapped resolutions. Instead, it pulls us into the depths of James's mind, showing us the complexities of the human condition, grief, guilt, redemption, and despair. These are not simple linear experiences. They are tangled, messy, and often contradictory. We may wish for a clear path, a way to make sense of the chaos, but the reality is far more complex. Silent Hill 2 forces us to confront these contradictions. It asks us to look within ourselves, to understand how we cope with our own mistakes, how we choose to live with the consequences of our actions. As the camera focuses on the fading fog that surrounds Silent Hill, we are reminded of the eerie stillness of the town. There is no resolution in Silent Hill, only quiet, oppressive waiting. The fog, which once obscured the truth, now begins to fade. But even as it clears, we know that James is still trapped. And perhaps we too are trapped, stuck in our own cycle of guilt and regret, searching for a way out that may never come. The town may change, but the journey is the same. We are all haunted by the past in one form or another. James Sunderland is not a hero. He is not a villain. He is simply a man broken by his choices, by his regrets, and by his inability to move on. His story is tragic, not because of the monsters that lurk in the town, but because of the monsters that live inside him. It is this raw, unflinching portrayal of the human condition, of how guilt can consume us, of how we struggle to forgive ourselves, that makes Silent Hill 2 one of the most powerful stories ever told in the history of video game. In the end, Silent Hill 2 is not about providing answers. It is not about understanding every aspect of its world or its characters. It is about perception. It is about how we see the world around us and how we deal with the choices we've made. The truth of Silent Hill 2 lies not in the answers it gives us, but in the questions it forces us to ask. And perhaps in the end, that's the true horror. We are all James Sunderland. We are all trapped in our own Silent Hills, searching for answers that we may never find. In every step we take, in every choice we make, we carry the weight of our past. We may seek redemption, we may hope for forgiveness, but we must first confront the truth. Silent Hill 2 asks us to face our own darkness and to reckon with the consequences of our action. It is a story that transcends the medium, resonating deeply with anyone who has ever struggled with guilt, regret, and the search for meaning. And in that, it becomes more than just a game. It becomes a reflection of us. Silent Hill 2 offers us more than just a haunting story. It gives us a deep dive into the psyche of James Sunderland. The town of Silent Hill is not merely a setting, it is an extension of his mind and a manifestation of his guilt and sorrow. Every monster, every shadow, every twist in the road represents a part of himself that he cannot escape. The town is both a reflection and a prison, pushing him to confront the darkest corners of his soul. James is not just lost in Silent Hill, he is lost within himself. As we follow James's journey, we see a man torn apart by his own actions, struggling to find a way out of a self-imposed hell. His inability to move on from his wife Mary's death, his obsession with atonement, and his desperate need for redemption all contribute to his spiraling downfall. Every death, every encounter in Silent Hill pushes him closer to the truth, yet each step further into madness. He is trapped, not just by the town, but by his mind's refusal to accept what happened, by his need to punish himself, by his inability to forgive himself. The true horror of Silent Hill 2 lies not in the grotesque creatures that inhabit the town, but in the psychological torment that James endures. Silent Hill 2 forces us to reckon with the psychological toll of grief, guilt, and self-loathing. It asks us how far we're willing to go to atone for our past mistakes, and whether true redemption is ever really possible. If anything, Silent Hill 2 is a powerful reminder that the most terrifying monsters are often the ones within ourselves. The monsters James faces are not the true threat. It is his own guilt, his own inability to face the truth. That is his undoing. And in that, Silent Hill 2 shows us the complexity of the human experience, our fears, our regrets, and our unyielding need for closure. The deep dive into the psyche of James Sunderland is now complete. And as always, if you found this analysis intriguing and want to explore more deep dives into video games and their psychological themes, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. That way, you won't miss any of our future video analyses. We'll be exploring more stories that leave a lasting impact on the mind. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next video. Take care and keep questioning.